a warm welcome. You're watching Gold 2019. What we'll do over the next 1 hour is go through the in-depth rating and assessment of the India Today group of editors on the ranking and performance of every single Modi minister. Just how well have all our mantris done in the ministries that have been allocated to them? I want to introduce the India Today editors joining me on this special broadcast, starting with our editorial director for publishing, Raj Chingappa. He's led the team that's put this Modi Mantri Mandal ranking together. Welcome, Raj. Flanking him, Sandeep Unithan. Sandeep is tracking a lot of the strategic affairs related ministries. Shweta Punj is tracking a lot of the economy related ministries. Ajit Jha leads research for India Today. I want to introduce now our managing editor of business, Rajiv Dubey. Also with us, our national affairs editor at India Today Television, Rahul Srivastav. Himanshu Mishra covers the BJP and the Modi Sarkar for Aaj Tak. Lastly, Sudhiranjan Sen tackles and deals with strategic affairs for India Today. So welcome all our viewers on this special broadcast, a deep dive into the performance, the good, bad and ugly of every single major Modi Mantri. This is Goal 2019. What I'll do right at the top is walk across to our video wall. I'll ask Shweta to join us. We will start with arguably the most important ministry there is, the one that affects most lives, which is the finance ministry. The man at the helm, Arun Jaitley, out of action just this moment, but he's been in charge for the longest time. Shweta, his report card, please.
Absolutely, Rahul. He's been hard at work the last 4 years. A first-time finance minister. We think that he's made a lot of progress and pushed through a lot of structural reforms. Most importantly, GST. We were talking about GST for years until he managed to get all the states on board and finally pushed it through. Then, of course, non-performing assets of banks, again a huge issue which this government inherited, and they've really pushed the banks into coming clean. But that problem still persists.
It's not as if it's got fixed.
Right, but cannot be wished away overnight, but they've made substantial progress. Failures, lack of job creation. We have to remember that this is a government that promised us jobs. This was one of their key mantras. But lack of focus on labor-intensive industries, especially because of implementation challenges, we've not seen much progress in that. As a minister, we've ranked him on these parameters. Promptness of response, we've given him a B, specifically because when it comes to policy challenges, it's very difficult for a minister to single-handedly push through a change. So that's where the entire bureaucracy comes into play, and I think that's been a challenge. For instance, angel tax. That's what startups have been complaining about.
But he's got lots of A's there as well.
Yeah, that's right. So that's why we give him a B there, because the entire machinery around him needs to move fast. Understanding of issues. When you talk to him about any issue, whether it's finance or anything in the government, he comes across as somebody with a lot of clarity and focus, and his grasp is extremely sharp. Openness to ideas. This is the feedback I've got from a lot of people who've gone and met him from across the board, across industries, and they say that Mr. Jaitley is open to ideas. Commitment to reforms.
Yes, Raj.
You know, we are giving, when you put that performance index 7 out of 10, that is not just reflecting the economy, we've also evaluated with commerce. We might have a different rating, we just did a pure economy rating, but because we've clubbed it with commerce, what we have done in this study is actually looked at major sectors. So 7 out of 10 reflects the combine of the economy as well as the commerce. In commerce, for instance, there's still a lot of work to be done. And if you look at exports, the entire problem of trade with other countries.
Jaitley also gets an A for achievement.
And commitment to reforms.
Great.
IBC bankruptcy code is a huge accomplishment for this government.
Rahul Srivastav tracks the finance ministry very closely. Rahul, India Today magazine saying lack of job creation, arguably Jaitley's biggest failure. You talk to the man, he'll refuse. He'll say the data is wrong and that more jobs are being created than what the Labour Ministry data reflects.
So Rahul, it's I think half full, half cup kind of situation. The government really doesn't know. I have been inside the ministries. The biggest problem with this government or any government in the past has been they may say anything, they don't really watch job generation, what kind of jobs are being created and what kind of jobs are being lost. What demonetization did, nobody knows. Definitely some schemes are taking off. There has been a pickup as far as the highway sector is concerned. People are being employed. Several other sectors, there is more employment being generated. But how is it that despite that for almost everything Aadhaar is being asked in this country, day before yesterday for a blood test, I was asked that give your Aadhaar. The government, at the time of giving jobs, anybody doesn't have data. There was a task force, it is yet to come up.
Data that we have. There is a data that's put out by the NSSO, then we have the EPFO data. So there are 3 sets of data, which is what makes the job situation very confusing. And I would agree with Rahul on the fact that nobody really has gauged the impact of demonetization on ground.
Then Rahul, there is another issue in this, is that when we are talking job generation, there is a huge crisis as far as the labor reforms are concerned. The industry wants a slight loosening of the laws. Industry is the one which does not want to, is hesitant to put in money because of certain factors. Labor clauses are one of them.
Rajiv, one of the things that goes in Jaitley's favour is that even if the rollout of some of those reforms wasn't perfect, the GST and the insolvency code are still works in progress, he had the political acumen to bring people together to push those reforms through.
GST may have its flaws, it has its frailties, but it is beginning to deliver. If you see the e-way bill implementation, it has actually increased the GST collections to almost 94,000 crores in the last month.
Have gone up by 50%
On an average,
since GST was
average, in the last 7-8 months, average GST collections have been 89,000 crore. E-way bill implementation in 1 month has brought it up to 94,000 crore. Government expects about 1 lakh crore to come from GST collections on an average in the next fiscal. I think that's
so. A lot of this, Ajit, is long-term structural reform, the results of which may not be immediately seen, but are fundamentally altering the governance architecture of the Indian economy.
Well, what did you point out, Rahul, is that if you look at his 4th budget, it's called a farmer's budget. One of the highest allocation in agriculture was done in this budget, and the important minimum support prices, the MSP, for example, in 25 commodities for the first time has been declared right in the 4th budget by Arun Jaitley. So in a way, from 2016 to 2018, 3 budgets, if you look at, highest allocation in agriculture.
Okay.
Also, I think, just to also add to what Ajit is saying, on infrastructure, I think their spending has been quite enormous. And so if you look at jobs, looking at roads being constructed, housing being constructed. Now, these do not actually come, much of it doesn't come into the formal sector that will be there. But because if you see later on that we assess Mr. Gadkari, the kind of highway building that has happened, and also the number of houses that they've put in, that itself will contribute a lot. So on the job situation, the actual numbers remain fluid. But we would know, of course, when the election happens.
So we've dealt with
who's
finance
really,
and we've dealt with Arun Jaitley. I need to step on the pedal because there are multiple ministers we wish to cover, and whoever's report card gets left out, then people will wonder what India Today thought of them. So I now come to the second most crucial ministry, the Ministry of Home Affairs. Many would argue this is more important than finance, but that's a debate for another day. The Home Ministry also very important. The man at the helm, our Home Minister Rajnath Singh. Sandeep Punithan, if you could just walk across with me. Let's now bring you the report card of India's Home Minister, former BJP President, former UP Chief Minister Rajnath Singh. Sandeep, take it away.
Well, Rahul, one of the biggest achievements of this government has been the fact that Maoist insurgency is on the back foot. Now, 44 districts were taken off the list of Maoist infected districts. That's a huge achievement. And this, in the last 20 years, Maoism has not been in the kind of it hasn't seen the kind of reverses that it has under this government. And that's a very, very significant achievement. The failings of this government, unfortunately, are the fact that, systems like the NAT grid and the crime and criminal tracking network systems, which have been
No, but the fact that there hasn't been a single major terror attack in India's hinterland outside Gurdaspur and Pathankot is a big achievement.
Sure, that's a very big achievement. And the thing is that in many of the several, terrorist-related cases like Pathankot, the major sensational thing in Uri, for instance, none of these cases have yet to, begin trials. So what we are seeing is that despite a promise of fast-tracking terror-related cases, we haven't seen the kind of delivery on the ground.
Political interference in intelligence agencies.
That's correct, and they haven't done anything significant about that.
Here is his report card. Sandeep.
So promptness of response, we'd give him a B. Understanding of issues, A. Openness to ideas, B. Commitment to reforms, A. Achievement, B. And so achievement, we've given a B simply because many of these schemes that we spoke of, like a smart boundary fencing between India and Pakistan, the crime and criminal tracking network, NAT grid, all these big ticket projects that have been in the pipeline for several years have not even come to
overall
the stage
net he's got 6 on 10, so slightly behind the finance minister. But the one thing Rachingappa, is that the Home Ministry is such a complex ministry. It's a behemoth of sorts. And whoever's at the helm trying to push the reform agenda through to execution is a tough ask.
I mean, the reason why he gets a B is on two, as Sandeep said, on two fronts, whether it was the Naxal problem and in Northeast, he somewhat seemed to have delivered, particularly among the Maoists. But when it comes to Kashmir, we've seen the kind of turmoil, the kind of violence that's happened across Kashmir, and that is almost like an intractable issue at the moment.
Sudeep Ranjan, is one of the biggest problems. The fact that on Kashmir, we've heard different voices. Not as if the government over 4 years has had one consistent policy. We've seen hard aggression. We've seen the human touch. It almost seems as if the government itself is not 100% certain on how to approach Kashmir.
See, completely agree. And the reason perhaps is because it's not Rajnath Singh who's driving Kashmir policy, and he's being run by remote control. And therefore, much of what he would want to do, because we all know Rajnath Singh's, he has a soft touch to it. That did not come out. And now we have gone back there. But I have a question for Raj and the survey. When we say that the Maoist insurgency has been tackled by this government, but if you look at the figures, there has been a sharp drop in the Maoist, the number of killed insurgencies since 2011. And that's because the communication networks of the Maoists had been
So you're saying thank Chidambaram also?
I am not saying thank anyone. I'm saying it is a continuous process. So can we give it to one?
Himanshu.
राहुल, मेरा जो बात ये कह रहे हैं उससे मैं एग्री भी करता हूँ, लेकिन बड़ी बात यह है कि जो 4 साल में सरकार ने अपना डाटा रिलीज किया, सारी मिनिस्ट्रियों के परफॉर्मेंस का रिकॉर्ड दिया, उसमें होम मिनिस्ट्री नहीं है। नक्सल में इतना करने के बाद भी होम मिनिस्ट्री
क्यों नहीं है? होम मिनिस्ट्री
शायद सरकार की अचीवमेंट में वो सारी चीज़ें शायद नहीं आती होंगी। वो जो दिखाना चाहते हैं, जो जनता के पास लेके जाना चाहते हैं, उनसे वहाँ पे इफेक्टेड जगहों पे उनको वोट शायद अभी नहीं मिलेंगे। इसीलिए होम मिनिस्ट्री उस 4 साल के परफॉर्मेंस में बाहर है।
Which is slightly unfair, Rahul Srivastava, given the fact that the Home Ministry is one of the biggest ministries. You put together a 46-minute presentation and there isn't a single slide on the Home Minister or the Home Ministry's achievements.
Oh, there is a crisis. You see, what Shruti was also saying, remote control. If you see the muscular Home Ministry policy on Kashmir, it's not just Rajnath Singh. There is a lot of the National Security Advisor in it. If you look at, say what is happening in Chhattisgarh, there is a political constraint to it. What Himanshu is saying, that tomorrow that state is heading towards elections. If you say that you have killed as many people there, that's a bone of contention. I think Home Ministry is a very tough ministry. Rajnath Singh's asset is that he has got broad shoulders, political sagacity and experience that he can take a lot of hammering. And I think the ministry has been rather corruption-free and controversy-free. I think one can credit him for that.
What about the morale of the troops, the paramilitary forces and the kind of equipment they have?
Well, Rahul, I want to take up this point about Rajnath being just one of several stakeholders in the Home Ministry, and he's actually towing a very conciliatory line. If you see the statements that he's been coming out with, he is a firm believer in Vajpayee's
no, but the others don't agree. You hear what Sushma says, you hear what the BJP president said, the same government talking in different words.
That's correct. So you have a hard line and you have Rajnath who's actually towing the middle path. He's more of the soft line, and I must tell you that he's been very hands-on as far as it comes to Maoist insurgency. I've spoken to the people in Chhattisgarh and they say that he is on the ground very often, talking to them, asking them what kind of stuff they need. They wanted, what kind of plans they want, and he's all there up right in front like a general leading troops.
So let's now shift gear and move to external affairs. Let's now bring you the report card of the one minister who does only one press conference in the whole year. Sushma Swaraj. Rachingappa, if you can accompany me to our big video wall, we present to you now the report card of India's external affairs minister, the understated, camera-shy Sushma Swaraj.
Well, Rahul, when we assess this ministry, we must also understand that it is Prime Minister Modi that is directing foreign policy. And what Sushma Swaraj has done is played a great vice captain. She's played a supportive role.
But they get along very well.
That's the good point. And I think why we're giving the foreign ministry much higher marks is because when you look at the conduct of foreign policy, yes, you could quibble when you look at, if you look at the successes, the way they've engaged with the major powers, whether it's US, Russia, Japan, Israel. Certainly what Mr. Modi and his vice captain has done is to improve the standing of a stature of India.
These are her failures, you think?
Failures. Well, one of this, this is a kind of a mixed bag. With
Now, how is it a
neighbors-
mixed bag? With most of our neighbors, our relationship right now is arguably worse than it was a few years ago.
Let's look at the critical neighbors that we're looking at, whether it's Pakistan and China. Pakistan, certainly, I think the government made an effort. It had a policy. It's changed its policy to try and work out things that are there. And if you look at China, we did have a confrontation with them in Doklam. We have now, with the informal summit coming back. So what you're seeing is a government that's proactive, that wants to get things done. Every government will have its successes and failures in foreign policy. The reason why we give it 7.5, and it's probably one of the better ministries that is there in terms of performance, is because Mr. Modi's out there. Right now he's in Singapore, he's in Indonesia, he's engaged the world like no one else has done with a strategy. He's looked at the economic side of it, which is trade. He's looked at strategic aspects of foreign policy. And then if
You've given her 0.5 marks more than Arun Jaitley. Just remember that.
But
Okay,
don't
here it
forget
is.
it, that
Promptness
Jaitley
of response, A. Understanding of issues, A. Openness
Oh,
to
that's-
ideas,
that-
B. Commitment to reforms, B. Achievement, B.
That's largely Mrs. Sushma Swaraj. We are not looking at Mr. Modi at this. If we had added that, then he'd probably, all these ratings would change. The reason why we have given her is, though Mr. Modi has led the team, she certainly helped on a lot of fronts, and that's why she gets a good. But there is also a criticism that a dynamic minister like Sushma Swaraj hasn't got the kind of play that she should have had as one of the senior ministers of the Modi
Interesting. You're saying this is part Modi ratings, part Sushma ratings, which is slightly unfair, Rahul Srivastava, given the fact that they both get along really well. You know, the whole world assumes that there is some kind of friction between Sushma Swaraj and Prime Minister Modi. You speak to either Sushma herself or to people in the Prime Minister's office, and the stories you pick up are of two people who actually work as a team.
Rahul, pre-2014, yes, there was different dynamics within the BJP. Once Prime Minister Modi proved that he is the main vote getter, the BJP has come to power with 300 and something votes, seats in Lok Sabha. It is settled. The issue was settled. Sushma Swaraj has settled as somebody in the External Affairs Ministry with a deep interest of the Prime Minister's office as far as ministry is concerned. The issue is settled. There is a certain amount of autonomy she has as a minister, but there is a certain amount of cooperation with which the ministry works with the Prime Minister's
The
office.
failures that were mentioned, Sandeep Onithan,
I'd just like to add, is that let's not forget that every Prime Minister has actually virtually taken charge of foreign policy, except when Gujral was foreign minister, when he sort of led the thing. So it is not unusual for...
decided on the nuclear policy. It was a strong move as a foreign policy measure.
Okay, let's look at the failures that were mentioned in that Sushma Swaraj report card. Failure number one was some of the relationship in our neighborhood and the fact that we've been talking tough with Pakistan, but it's not, Sandeep Onithan, as if we've gotten anywhere.
That's correct, Rahul. I think one of the biggest failings of this government in terms of foreign policy has been the neighborhood first policy. They've really promised to address their relations. If you recall how the SAARC countries were invited for the Prime Minister's swearing in 2014. In the last 4 years, we've actually seen a downslide in terms of relations with Maldives, with Pakistan. Nepal has also been a problem. Where we've actually really scored is in relations with Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. But if you look at the general picture, relations of the near abroad of India are in a bit of a crisis.
Okay, so we've dealt with external affairs.
Rahul, I think at this stage we must clarify, since both these things keeps flashing. 7.5 to 10 is on 10 is this overall ministry, and the other rating that we're looking at, the A's and B's is actually deals with the individual
I think that's
minister.
unfair to Sushma Swaraj. Unfair because if it's 7.5, then she gets the credit. You know, you can't give her part of the credit and give her most of the blame.
And Rahul, I think it is also unfair that neighborhood policy was totally dictated by Prime Minister Modi. And I think what she can be credited with, creating a sense of global isolation
Himanshu, this is a
for
problem.
Pakistan.
To constantly have
Against
someone
Pakistan.
watching over every action of yours. But Sushma Swaraj has handled it with a lot of tact.
देखिए राहुल, मैं जो बात अभी राहुल कह रहे थे कि देखिए सब कुछ तय जो होता है फॉरेन पॉलिसी, अगर आप किसी से भी बात करेंगे तो वो प्रधानमंत्री के कार्यालय से होता है। लेकिन सुषमा स्वराज ने दो इश्यूज ऐसे पकड़े कि जिस पर उन्होंने आम आदमी से अपने आप को जोड़ लिया। हमेशा फॉरेन मिनिस्ट्री अगर आप देखेंगे तो आम आदमी से कभी जुड़ी नहीं दिखती थी। पासपोर्ट का इशू हो या कोई भारत का नागरिक क्राइसिस में हो उसको रिकवर कराने की, ये सारी चीजें दिखती नहीं थी। यही चीज सुषमा की यूएसपी है, जो सुषमा को लगता है कि अगर फॉरेन पॉलिसी वहां से तय होती है तो वो अपनी इमेज को जहां बिल्ड करती है वो यही।
So she has a image of being a Mother Teresa for Indians in distress. That works to some extent to her credit. I want to now come to the highway, the expressway. Nitin Gadkari riding that expressway. Rajiv Dubey, walk with me. Let's now deal with India's Transport Minister, the Water Resources Minister. Rajiv, the big successes of Nitin Gadkari.
So the biggest success as far as Gadkari is concerned is that whole effort at increasing the pace of highway creation. 10 kilometers per day is what is the rate at which highways were being built when the NDA government came into charge, and now it's being built at 27 kilometers per day. He's come up with projects like the Bharatmala project. He's gone into monetization of highways, toll operate transfer, and he believes that the monetization of highways can be as much as 1.5 lakh crore out of the existing highways. So he's saying he's not short of money at all. You have to remember that he is the highest rated minister.
His failures?
His failures, if you have to look at failures, one of course is the fact that the land acquisition has been slightly slow. But that is
you can't blame Gadkari for. That's an Indian problem.
The other major failure is that road safety and road digitization of highways hasn't really gone at the pace that
this is the only minister we've seen so far, and possibly the only minister who's got all A's.
All A's, promptness of response, the industry vouches for it, understanding of issues. Nobody knows roads better than Nitin Gadkari. He's done India's best Mumbai-Pune highway, the first of them. Openness to ideas, very open to all kinds of ideas. You can see it in the Delhi-Meerut Expressway, how he's built it. It's a green highway. It has solar power and things like that. Commitment to reforms, nobody doubts that. Achievement is
8 on 10. Well done, Nitin Gadkari. One round of applause for Nitin Gadkari, who's got, if your principal Modi Raj, this is the kind of student you want in the class.
I mean, let's give credit where it is due. In terms of the ministers, it's Mr. Gadkari that's truly performed in terms of targets and whatever he's wanted to do. Was able to knock out bureaucracy in many senses, sorted out a lot of the pending roads. But we must point out that the reason why he gets all 5 A's is as an individual minister, but the overall sector also does well, which is transport. We've also looked at railways, we've also looked at aviation, and this is one ministry that the Modi government can say that it has delivered.
The other fact, Shweta, is that he's also constantly willing to think out of the box. Absolutely. And he somehow finds finances when other bureaucrats would get mired in, minutiae and say, paisa kahan se aayega. He says, don't worry, that goes back to him being the kind of social entrepreneur he is.
Infrastructure is clearly one of the big success stories of this government. They've put in a lot of focus, they put in funds, and of course they have a minister who's getting things done on the ground.
Rahul detests red tape. He detests it. I have been in the offices when he will pick up the phone and call up another minister and tell him that the file is with you for the last 17 days.
In a very Bombaya way,
it's
very
Bombaya way. Second, I think the confidence also comes from the fact that he is ex-president of a party.
Yeah. No, but there are others who are ex-presidents and don't work with this swagger.
Second, then very importantly, he's close to the RSS top brass.
Also,
that's one thing which works in his favor, that he's the only ministry, I think, which is a slightly hands-off as far as the PMO is concerned. It is not the same kind of a ministry as a finance or a home or others.
No, we saw an interesting dynamic, Himanshu, when the Meerut Expressway was being inaugurated. The Prime Minister actually asked for Gadkari to come in his car and ride alongside Prime Minister Modi. That doesn't happen very often.
देखिए ये बात सही है कि नितिन गडकरी का जो काम है वो बोल रहा है। शायद इस सरकार में अगर किसी का काम सच में दिख रहा है ग्राउंड पे तो नितिन गडकरी है। लेकिन नितिन गडकरी को जैसे राहुल कह रहे थे कि वो फोन उठाते हैं सीधा मंत्री को कहते हैं ये फाइल कर दीजिए, ये सिर्फ अपनी मंत्रालय के लिए नहीं करते हैं। वो उनके पास ऐसे कई आइडियाज होते हैं जो दूसरे मंत्रियों को देते हैं कि आप इस पे काम कीजिए, आप ये करेंगे तो आपके मंत्रालय में ये होगा। और इससे ये जो चीज़ है यही यूएसपी है। और जब वो करते हैं, किसी ने सोचा नहीं होगा कि मैट्रिनो आएगी। उन्होंने वादा कर दिया है कि वो 2019 तक शायद कंस्ट्रक्शन शुरू करेंगे। किसी ने सी प्लेन की कल्पना नहीं की थी, उन्होंने उड़ाया। और प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी को इतना अच्छा लगा वो आइडिया कि उन्होंने गुजरात कैंपेन में लास्ट डे उसको यूज कर लिया। तो ये सारी चीजें शायद
someone Ajit Jha who adds value to brand Modi by being his own man on the ground doing his own thing.
In fact, he has influenced younger ministers so much.
Who has he influenced?
That the rural development minister has built the 2022 targets for rural roads. They are ending in 2019. Narendra Singh Tomar. In fact, when I talked to him, he pointed out that if this is the example, then we have to move faster.
And don't forget shipping. Shipping is where he has increased the revenues of 10 major ports by 4 times. By 4 times.
No, and this whole business of having big freight boats in our waterways. And when I was in Varanasi, I actually saw a big setup being put in place over there, where they'll actually have cargo moving on the Ganga from Varanasi to Bengal.
He's the first infrastructure minister, Rahul, to talk about multimodal transport. See, in the last 70 years of India, we've been seeing transport in silos, like your road transport, rail transport, air transport, and river transport. This is the first minister who's talking of multimodal transport, assessing them all as, linked, interlinked. And
credit goes to Prime Minister Modi because he created a super ministry, initially thought of it, that we can put all of them together, although the idea didn't really click. Rahul, one very important thing about Nitin Gadkari, which is said that why he's been successful is also because how he deals with other chief ministers and opponent leaders. There is a huge plus for him. No chief minister will say that if I call up Nitin Gadkari, I don't get him on line. If I have a proposal, Nitin Gadkari is there.
So he does that for friends and foes.
Friends and foes. And that is why he's successful.
We had a lot of the opposition chief ministers on a platform once, and Mr. Gadkari was there. All of these ministers praised him. I mean, all the chief ministers said that. Yeah, you were there, and remember the state of state award.
सबसे ज़्यादा अगर किसी आप देखेंगे तो अरविंद केजरीवाल भी उनसे प्रभावित हैं, और इसीलिए उन्होंने शायद 300 इलेक्ट्रिक बसें भी शायद दिल्ली के लिए ऑर्डर भी कर दी हैं.
That's an interesting politician.
Gadkari is a man that I've covered as an infrastructure reporter in the city of Mumbai 20 years back. I have seen the man build 20 flyovers in less than 2 years and the country's first expressway, the Mumbai-Pune expressway, in a record time. So this is a person who's delivered consistently from the state, and now he's doing that on a much bigger scale at the center.
That's why we give him 5 years.
Straight A's. No one else has got that.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is take a very quick break. When we come back, more Mantri report cards. We'll start with Nirmala Sitharaman in defense, Piyush Goyal in railways, Ravi Shankar Prasad as law. So there are multiple more report cards. I hope you're enjoying this broadcast. Some mantris will like it, some may not. So far we've had some good report cards, some bad report cards follow as well. In part 2 of this India Today special broadcast, stay with us. We are back with Goal 2019. The new India Today magazine now on stands, looking at every Indian Sarkar minister and the performance of that Mantri ji. Assessment of the Modi Sarkar in its final year. This is the report card of key Modi ministers. We've dealt with transport, we've dealt with external affairs, the Home Ministry and Finance. We now come to the Ministry of Defence. Sandeep Punithan will walk across with me as we bring you now Nirmala Sitharaman's report card. But this is not just her report card, it's the report card of the Defence Minister, who now happens to be Nirmala Sitharaman.
Well, Rahul, one of the problems of the Defence Ministry is that we've seen 4 Defence Ministers in 4 years.
By the time they understand what to do, they often get transferred.
That's right. I mean, that's one of the biggest mysteries of this ministry. And unfortunately, to be fair to Nirmala, she's been Defence Minister only for 6 months. So what we are assessing her is on the achievements of the ministry as a whole and not so much of Nirmala.
But how can War Memorial be a big achievement?
Now,
come on.
This was something that they promised in their manifesto in 2014. Now, this has been a very, very big issue for the armed forces, that for the last 70 years we fought 5 wars, but we've not had a single memorial for our soldiers. That is something that they have achieved. These are the 2 big failings of the ministry in the last 4 years. Modernization of the armed forces has slowed down considerably. Budgets are not available.
But that's also for a government that says we are very pro the armed forces.
Absolutely.
And you're saying there's a big India Today cover which said that there isn't enough money for modernization.
That's correct. So this is one of the biggest failings of the government, is not to spend adequately on defense. Now, National Defense Universities is something that they promised again in their manifesto. They promised to set up 4 universities. As of now, we've only have 1 university, which is
and a lot of them Make in India in defense never really took off.
That's correct. That's another big failing.
So there's some C's there as well.
So in achievement, we've given the ministry C because modernization hasn't really picked up, and Make in India in defense, which was a very key pillar of this ministry, hasn't taken off either.
So net, India Today magazine gives the defense minister 5 out of 10. Of the ministers we've tracked so far, Raj Chingappa, this is the worst performance. Nirmala Sitharaman is a hard-working minister. She's not going to be happy with these numbers that you've given her.
Well, let's also point out that she's been in the saddle how long? 9 months?
6 months.
6 months, right? So we are not looking at her as Defence Minister for 4 years. The reason why we gave the sector 5 out of 10 is we're looking at that as 4 years. So it's not that
no, but there's a problem here, Sudhir Ranjan, given the fact that this is a government that promised that defence would be one of their key thrust areas. And 4 years later, if the armed forces are complaining that there isn't enough money for modernization and they were getting more under UPA, that's not a good sign.
And worse than that, I mean, even one rank, one pension, which this government holds out as one of their major achievements. You today or in a couple of days' time, you will see the veterans coming out in the streets again.
No, but the government thinks that's vested interest and the majority of the veterans are happy.
At the end of the day, they have not been able to address the veterans. Now, if you come to modernization, a similar kind of a thing is there. I mean, it is one step forward, two step backwards, because half your projects haven't taken up. And the Vice Chief, we have seen, have told the Parliamentary Standing Committee
No, but there's also a fundamental problem with the way the defense forces make their requirements known. And a senior minister told me, Sandeep, that, they come with this dhobi list, they want everything.
Right.
I think the one thing that Nirmala Sitharaman is now trying to do is prioritize. Say, what are the kind of actual operations the armed forces are likely to be involved in?
True.
Do we have adequate ammunition for the equipment we already have? Let's focus on that.
Right.
This bucket list, demanding everything and getting nothing, has been going on for too long with the armed forces.
Well, the problem, Rahul, as you rightly pointed out, is the lack of political oversight in the defense ministry. For too long, the forces have been allowed to, produce these lists, and the government would give whatever they asked for, and when they didn't, there would be a lot of complaints. But now, for the first time, you're seeing that happening, that rationalization is taking place in the ministry. A lot of reform is taking place in the fourth year of the government, which actually should have begun in 2014 itself.
No, but there I think at some level, Rahul...
One more point. The FDI has not taken off in defense, nor has the Make in India taken off in defense.
Rajiv,
So those are the two areas also where defense was supposed to contribute very significantly.
FDI is only going to come in when you place orders, when you have projects, when you sign deals. Now, you're looking at a...
No, and the company wants 51% plus control. Who's going to come at 49%?
Rahul, just apart from the fact of Make in India not being a success in defense, let's look at the budget allocation.
Right.
I mean, we just carried a cover story which said the armed forces is broke. I mean, particularly the army, which is the striking arm of the this thing.
True.
Now, I think that's something
It's a very, very
and
significant thing.
And at some level, Rahul Srivastav, the blame must go at the highest level. You had a revolving door defense minister. For a ministry as important as defense, for a government and a party that understands the importance of defense, to be so casual about who comes in as defense minister is not right.
You see, if there is ownership, Nitin Gadkari, the ministry does well. So ownership is important. You had Arun Jaitley, Manohar Parrikar, then the second phase of Manohar Parrikar, in which it was a very reluctant Manohar Parrikar because his heart was in Goa.
It took him so much time to learn about defense.
And then it was Jaitley back again and burdened with not one ministry. It is first time in the history of this country we had a man straddling the two blocks of Raisina Hill. A defense minister and a finance minister. Defense ministry says we want X, Y, Z. Finance ministry says we can't give you this, all this. There is a huge crisis in that.
But that was more of an interim step under the NDA 1.
No, but the other thing is that, Sudhi, defense is such a complex ministry. You need somebody who spends serious time, energy and effort understanding the nuances of higher defense management. It's not the kind of ministry you can sleepwalk into without, your life experiences preparing you to be India's defense minister.
I mean, no comment on Nirmala Sitharaman. She's just taken over. But the new committee that has been formed with the NSA at the head of it, you have the Defense Secretary, the Expenditure Secretary, and it's another supra body that has been created to understand what you need for defense. Now, so are we again seeing another kind of a body that is coming in and will, therefore carry out the dictates, keeping the defense minister away? That also is a very, very big issue.
Okay. So we've dealt with defense. I want to now come to Union Law Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad. Ajit Jha is going to walk across with me and explain the successes and failures of Ravi Shankar Prasad. So we'll start first and foremost with his successes. Go for it, Ajit.
The biggest successes of Ravi Shankar Prasad are Lok Adalats. 8.3 million Lok Adalats, the pending cases have been, passed. Then
How many has he set up?
Entire during his period. Since he has come, this entire thing was hanging fire for several years throughout the UPA government. He has brought about enormous changes in this. Then the scrapping of obsolete laws.
But we still have so many obsolete laws. He's done some work.
1,200 obsolete laws which he has scrapped during his period. Quite a high number. Many of these laws were absolutely useless. Then
failures?
Nyay Mitra. No, let me just concentrate two more issues. Nyaya Mitra, which sort of goes to the common man, how the law reaches the common man. That's very important. And fourth of all, arbitration and reconciliation bill, which is going to be tabled in Parliament soon, the next time, during the next session of Parliament. These four are the big achievements of his government. Failures, the trouble with Ayodhya has been one of the biggest failures. I mean, after all, there was a promise in 2018, not much has been done.
The fight with the judiciary.
And the fight with the judiciary. The third is, one of the biggest problems with his entire budget is 70% goes into election, maintaining these elections all over the country. So there's a severe crisis of funds in the legal ministry. So that kind of handicaps
him. He gets a B for promptness of response, A for understanding of issues. He, of course, is a lawyer himself. B to openness to ideas, commitment to reforms, B, achievement, B. Commitment to reforms, Raj Chingappa, you're only giving him a B? You're saying he's removed 1,200 old and obsolete laws?
Well, the problem has been, and look, anyone who runs the law ministry, it's a very tough ministry to run. And if the reason why we give B is because in terms of the Supreme Court, higher judiciary, there's a lot needs to be done. There was a National Judicial Commission that was struck down by the Supreme Court judges. They haven't resolved it. We had this unprecedented scenes of Supreme Court judges addressing the public. And if you look at pendency of cases, these are very, very tough issues to do, whether it's digitization, electronic records of cases. There's a whole lot of things to be done.
You can't go away from Rahul Srivastava is the current acrimony with the judiciary. It's the law minister's job at some level to help ensure that the judges and the government, the executive wing, are not at loggerheads.
Rahul, again a case of revolving doors. Sadanand Gowda, Ravi Shankar Prasad. There has not been ownership of this ministry yet again. Ravi Shankar Prasad is a lawyer. Maybe he could have stayed with this ministry. He was sent out. He is back here again. The government initially, when it walked inside Parliament with numbers, it thought it could dictate terms to the judiciary with a bill. It decided that it's going to create a bill which will appoint judges the way it wants to. There was no interaction with the judiciary as a stakeholder, how it is going to react. The judiciary has not forgiven the government from that day onwards. From that day onwards, the law minister's job has become absolutely
and sitting on a file coming from the collegium for months on end.
I think that confrontation between the government and the judiciary, partly the law minister has to resolve that, and that's the reason why you find the kind of rating that has happened for this particular ministry.
Ravi Shankar also wears another hat, IT and electronics. That's where I think he's done very good work. He's made, in fact, our Greater Noida belt as an electronics manufacturing hub. A lot of these mobile companies are manufacturing their components here. So that's a huge success story, considering Make in India overall has not really taken off. And privacy. Digital India, yeah, absolutely.
I think he's driven in terms of jobs also. One of the largest number of small town BPOs started by this government under Ravi Shankar. 1.55 lakh kilometers of optic fiber laid under BharatNet. 11 crore handsets produced last year in India itself.
That's
you have 83 million smartphone users now in India. I think these are stories, smaller, which have got slightly underreported. But I think
with all the subsidy schemes,
we have reported it elsewhere in the magazine. But we've rated him on law separately, and we've also looked at his performance separately.
So he's done better as IT minister, but it's also much tougher to be law minister, and there are some negatives in that report card as well.
Now, so his role is going to be.
He was the main lawyer of the fodder scam, which actually targeted the opponent, Lalu Prasad Yadav.
Yeah, but he's being judged for his performance in the current context. Yeah. Let's now focus on HRD, the affable Union HRD Minister, Prakash Javadekar. Rajingappa, if you can just walk across with me to give our viewers Prakash Javadekkar's report card. This is the India Today magazine report card of our HRD Minister, Prakash Javadekar. Raj.
Well, let's of course clarify that Prakash Javadekar wasn't HRD Minister for all these, and is actually taken by hardly 9 months. So we are rating him partly on the fact that he's come in much newer. But let's overall, when we look at the HRD ministry, this is not a ministry that the Modi government can be really proud about. There were major reforms that were to happen, particularly in higher education. There have been successes, there's no doubt about it, that they've done good work on various fronts. But when you look at the new education policy, that's been pending for many years. So I think that's one of the big things that we're looking at when we look at assessing the ministry. Much was expected from on the from.
No, but there are so many drafts of this national education policy. Each minister I talk to who's been HRD minister say, "Bas abhi aa rahi hai." You see, no, we're all ready with it. You'll see about it soon.
Mr. Javadekar, when we last spoke to him at the Aaj Tak conclave, said it's going to come next month.
Yeah, but every HRD minister has been telling us this for many years now.
And I think there's disappointment. The reason why we are giving him an achievement at sea, I mean, he's very open to ideas. There's no doubt he's one of the more articulate ministers that's there. We are not giving him excellent because we still think he needs to finish a couple of years
No,
in
an
that
achievement
ministry.
is C. Prakash Javadekar 5 on 10.
Certainly. And the reason why is given the fact that he's been only 9 months, what has he really shown to have transformed the ministry? And that reflects the overall. I mean, let's be fair to him. It also goes back.
So it's not just Prakash Javadekar. All HRD ministers taken
Put together
over 4 years. Prakash Javadekar gets it on his report card. That's because he's in the saddle just at this moment. But lots of contentious things which were building in the ministry earlier, Rahul Srivastava, he's kind of diffused. Granting extra autonomy to some higher educational institutions. Working on a new education policy. Earlier there was a certain amount of tension. He's kind of diffused that to some extent.
Yes, he has definitely brought his political experience to the HRD minister's table. I think it's not just he has handled that friction well. Also, there was tremendous amount of friction happening between the various affiliates of the Sangh and the BJP HRD minister. So much so that they were totally in arms that what they want from the education policy or the education initiatives are not being at all heard. And that was creating a sense of angst in the RSS and within the system.
I agree with Rahul in this, but I think the good thing that Prakash ji has brought in is that unlike in the past, the amount of controversies that the HRD ministry faced has considerably come down. If you look at the previous minister versus this,
he has kept his
he's
profile
kept that.
low,
I think
stuck to his job.
Very, very important that the HRD minister maintains his balance, is seen as a stable factor, someone who's thoughtful, and of course the new education policy is always a tough thing to do.
Okay, I want to come now to Dharmendra Pradhan, the Union Petroleum Minister. Shweta Punj will walk across with me and give you the report card for the man from Orissa, the man who one day hopes to be Chief Minister of Orissa, Union Petroleum Minister Dharmendra Pradhan.
So the Ujjwala Yojana, big success story for the government, and they in fact revised the target from 40 million to 80 million households. Again, a big success story that the government often talks about. The second is, of course, to make India a petroleum and a petrochemical hub. Again, he's carried out extensive negotiations and brought in a lot of companies to set up in India.
Okay, and more successes.
Well, yeah, and of course, he's worked to deepen India's diplomacy with Iran and Iraq on the oil
And holding
supply.
off despite American pressure.
And holding off despite
Failures.
American pressure, yes. Yes, now this is going to be a big challenge now. Rising global crude prices is going to pose a very big challenge for Dharmendra Pradhan. He's already in the block for that.
No, but blaming Pradhan for global prices is a bit unfair.
No, but they should have created a buffer, which they could have passed on now when the oil prices were low.
Okay.
But the government perhaps did not factor that in.
Lots of A's,
So they could have
4
dealt
A's
with
on his
that.
report card.
So yes, he's known to be a minister who is extremely close to the Prime Minister. The PMO takes a lot of interest in his ministry. His promptness of response is supposed to be, we've given him an A for that because he's very quick in getting back. He's open to ideas. He understands the issues rather quickly. In fact, I met him within months of him taking over as Petroleum Minister, and I thought that he had a good grasp of issues.
Okay, so A for achievement, A also for commitment to reforms.
Yes.
And the man whom some would say helped the BJP in Uttar Pradesh with his Ujjwala scheme. And the one other difference is that earlier there'd just be so many corporate lobbyists each time you'd go to the Petroleum Ministry. To quite an extent, he's been able to deal with that.
And also let's give him credit. He's been promoted just for that performance that he's there. He's brought clarity into a very difficult ministry. He's demonstrated, as you rightly said, some of the schemes that touch the poor, touch the common man. At the same time, he's brought out a vision for the petroleum sector, tried to make a difference on that front. Though, let's not forget, as Shweta pointed out, as one of the failures is that with oil prices going up, how he handles this crisis is going to also determine not just his performance, but his government's performance.
It's surprising that if you notice the time when the prices started going up and there was a sense of distress coming in the system, where was Mr. Pradhan? He was actually in Karnataka, in Bangalore, handling the BJP's number game, than the numbers as far as the oil prices are concerned.
But if you look at oil prices, Rahul, to be fair,
no, it's just an observation. It's just an observation.
No. The fact is that the only way you can reduce the prices of oil is by then agreeing that you will forfeit that much money, which will impact your fiscal deficit. It is not a
you
decision.
can't control it during elections and turn the tap
That is
on
a different-
Control
otherwise.
it during elections.
But anyway,
they're
that's-
market linked, as in they are the
No, they can't be market linked on most times except during elections.
of course is
They
the
weren't
point,
market linked during the Gujarat election, weren't market linked during the Karnataka election. So, yes, Himanshu.
राहुल एक चीज़ और है, जब पिछली बार फ्यूल प्राइस को लेकर बात बड़ी हुई थी तब वित्त मंत्री और धर्मेंद्र प्रधान दोनों की तरफ से सभी राज्यों के मुख्यमंत्रियों को चिट्ठी लिखी गई थी कि वो वैट घटा दें, टैक्सेस घटा दें, लेकिन बीजेपी रूलिंग स्टेट्स के सीएम से भी नहीं घटाए थे। तो शायद ये बीजेपी का महाराष्ट्र
और October Maharashtra
पूरे
in some
तरीके
states
से
had.
कहीं नहीं हो पाया।
Okay,
तो
so
शायद
we-
इस
I
वजह
just
से
want
भी
to make
बहुत
one
ज़्यादा
point, considering we're talking about oil prices. This government had an opportunity to build a stock, a buffer stock, when the oil prices were really low and they had a lot of fiscal room to do that. Why didn't they do something then?
Okay,
They could have
so all the editors have
managed to
spoken.
escalate.
We've run out of time on this special broadcast. There are more ministries still left. You want to read about it? This is where you can. Gold 2019, the new India Today magazine, now on stands. We're out of time on the special broadcast. I want to thank all the India Today editors for compiling this and our TV team for joining us and participating in this discussion. News and updates will continue on the other side. I'm now wondering who will be the first Mantri to call and who will be happy and unhappy at the end of this report card. But anyway, if there's anyone who's particularly unhappy, this is the man and that's the team. This is where we end this broadcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. News and updates continue.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you will love to.